Submission Radio here, post-fight at UFC 246, brought to you by Musashi, with the man that always graces us with his presence at the end of these big events, John Morgan from MMA Junkie. And boys, I'll tell you what, flying all the way from Australia for 40 seconds isn't something that you do very often, but when it comes to a Conor McGregor finish like that...
40 seconds? You mean 24 hours, right?
Well, 40 seconds. I wish. If we could switch it around and watch Conor McGregor fight for 25 hours and fly for 40 seconds, I would do it. But it's very rarely you come this far to see a spectacle like that. I mean, let's kick it off straight from the get-go. John, what was your reaction when you saw that this fight kind of never even really got started, and a guy, Cowboy Cerrone, who said he was just going to go out there and stand, kind of failed to really do anything and have a chance to have any kind of offense against a guy like Conor McGregor?
I found it pretty unbelievable, to be honest with you. I mean, look, I'm a Cowboy homer going in, and I picked him, but I did think that he had a lot of paths to victory. There were different options for him. But, Conor McGregor was the betting favorite for a reason. I just didn't know that he'd be able to do it like that. And I'll tell you what was even more impressive is just, had he come out with that left, he comes running out and throws that big left. Had he caught him with that and, it been a Jose Aldo situation, maybe you go like, I don't know, one shot. Like, I know it's weird to kind of doubt one shot. But when the guy in that 40 seconds has a chance to show some creativity with the shoulder strikes, has a chance to land a high kick, has a chance to hit the pinpoint left hand, listen, the guy just did it from start to finish. He impressed. Bummer of a result for Cowboy Cerrone, who wanted to deliver big in the big situation, and it just didn't work out. But it's amazing, man. I feel bad for you guys because I've made the plane trip the other way, and I know. But, man, I mean, as you said it, it's a spectacle, right? I mean, Conor McGregor fight nights are different than any other fight nights. The feel in the building is different than any other feel. The guy delivered on a big stage like nobody else does.
How do you think casuals perceive something like this? Conor McGregor winning. I mean, the word disappointing gets thrown a lot. I know some of the people in the crowd were a little bit like, oh, gee, like we expected a wall. We never really got it. But I guess in a sense, if you're looking to dissect, is Conor back? Does he look good? The end result, the end narrative is he went in and he destroyed the guy, right?
I agree. Yeah, I think he destroyed the guy. And I can see people being a little bit disappointed. I mean, you think about, Mike Tyson back in the day, and it was just this quick fight after quick fight. And do I really want to watch that? But, to happen every now and then is good. And after 15 months away, I mean, I think it kind of sealed up the reinvention of Conor McGregor this week. I mean, look, I had openly admitted it. Like, some of the last Conor McGregor fights, to me, weren't fun to cover. You know what I mean? As Dana White said it felt dark, the build up to the Khabib fight and all the anger and this and that. I mean, it was tough. And then, of course, there's all the stuff that happened outside of the cage, and you start to wonder, man, what's up with this guy? Is he going to continue to be a star? And, man, he said, listen, I reevaluated myself, I reinvented myself, and just the way he handled himself, the way he carried himself all week was phenomenal. Then he goes in there and does an amazing performance like that. And then highly respectful afterwards as well, which is something that I always love in the sport, man. The sportsmanship between athletes. They go in there and put it all on the line, but then are able to show that respect afterwards. So, listen, I could see some casual fans being a little bit disappointed. I get that, but, I mean, the guy just absolutely starched a legend, a future Hall of Famer at a different weight class, opening up so many possibilities moving forward. So, look, I think his popularity is back at an all-time high.
And for what it's worth, quicker than Jorge Masvidal, right?
And you can always say that was the knee. There was a bit of a knee there as well, right? So knee versus knee, what's going to happen? By the way, Conor McGregor trying to throw a flying knee against Khabib as well. So he was a knee, maybe even before the Jorge Masvidal practiced it and did it on Ben Askren. I'm just wondering, before we talk about 170 and how Conor looked at that weight class, you mentioned Cowboy Cerrone, and I want to find out from you. I mean, you would have covered a lot of his fights. I mean, probably even going back to WEC and all that kind of thing. Yep. He's a legend. He's got all the records. It was absolutely fantastic to see him get this opportunity, but obviously not a great look for anybody in the sport. What do you think the future holds for this guy? Obviously, he wants to keep fighting. He's like the Chuck Liddell Dana says, but ultimately, what did tonight say about sort of his future in your books?
I think, unfortunately, it probably closes the door on him ever being like a UFC champion or winning, that type of fight. I don't know that we're going to consider him a title contender moving forward, but I think he's still an exciting fighter. I think he's still a fan favorite. I mean, you saw the ovation that he got, when he did do, he initially left the cage, and they brought him back into the cage so that he could do a post-fight interview, and I'm glad he did, and you saw the crowd reaction, so people still want to see the guy fight. I do think probably 155 pounds is better. I mean, Conor McGregor is basically a lightweight, but I don't know that even though it's so easy for him at 170 to not have to cut weight. He said it going in. There's some big dudes there, so I think 155 is probably in his future, and I think a little time off wouldn't hurt right now as well. I mean, he's been through 3 tough fights in a row, so a little bit of rest. I know that's not normally his MO, but a little bit of rest is good. But listen, I think he's still got a lot of fight left. I think he's still going to beat a lot of kind of second tier to mid tier type guys, and I think he's just a guy that people want to watch fight, man. He's exciting. He's a legend. He's a future Hall of Famer.
Just quickly before Casper jumps over, we've seen Cowboy not show up for some of the big fights in his career. It's happened time and time again with a couple of guys, and we saw this guy come in on a motorcycle, even though he went past all the media and we all stood there waiting for ages and it didn't make any sense. He drove in on a motorcycle. It looked like he was trying to distract himself. We saw there was this interview the day before, yesterday when it came out, where he was overly emotional and just kind of stormed off. In your opinion, and it's happened to so many of Conor McGregor's past opponents, so there's nothing wrong with it, but was the moment too much in this case yet again for Cowboy?
And that was right after the weigh-ins, when the first time Conor McGregor showed any emotion and any high energy, when he got in Cowboy's face, and there was a moment of like, uh-oh, this just got very, very real. Respectful Conor went out the window.
Yeah, you know what? It's a fair question, but I'll be honest with you. I don't think the moment was too much for Cowboy Cerrone. I just think Conor McGregor was too much for Cowboy Cerrone, if I'm being honest. It all unfolded so quickly. I mean, Conor came out with that immediate left hand. Now, look, I'm going to throw it out there. I could see some people saying, hey, wasn't Donald trying to touch gloves at that point? But I'm not throwing that accusation. But it is something you could say. Haters, if they want to hate, could throw that out there. I'm not saying there was anything dirty or cheap there. But, I just think it caught Cowboy off guard. I don't think he was expecting that. Then he went inside, he did try to look for the takedown, which he said, hey, I'm going to stand and bang. But at least he did grab a hold of the body, at least for a second. That didn't work. Then again, you had the creativity, the shoulder strikes, which, to think that the shoulder strike was going to do that much damage. You could see it on his face. Obviously, he didn't come back here tonight because he had to go to the hospital. I think his shoulders were a big part of that high kick. Listen,
crazy.
It's nuts. I would hate to say that Cowboy choked in the big moment. I get it. That's the narrative going in. But I think in some ways, tonight especially, that would just be taking away from Conor McGregor.
So overall, do you think this was sort of like check, absolute success for Conor McGregor? Because I feel like the fight was one part of the equation. He had to win this fight. But it almost felt like a campaign from Conor McGregor this whole entire week. People, a lot of fans turned on Conor McGregor. A lot of people were anti-McGregor, the people that once loved him, for all the, disasters that he had this past year. And he did a very good job of composing himself. He obviously spoke to Tony Robbins. He just seemed in a lot more positive mentality. Even tonight, talking about, say, Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman, not to say that Usman was the one tweeting it. Someone hacked him, saying crazy things about Conor McGregor's wife and personal family, things that anybody would get pissed off about. Conor did not seem fazed in the least.
Finished every bit with all the best to them.
Right?
He'd get frustrated with him. We were like,
God help him.
Yeah, he would have said something to him, and he holds himself back. All the best to him.
But even we were talking about Israel Adesanya back in Melbourne, where Israel Adesanya is so fresh, so current. He's got his finger on all the pulses, and almost like the newer McGregor, And I feel like tonight McGregor, he was talking about, say, Ali and all his clients. He seemed like a fan, fans who know all these little intricate details, and we saw that glimpse of the old McGregor, who loves the sport. So, would you say that he accomplished his mission of making everybody fall in love with him once again?
I'll tell you another funny one. When he said that Cowboy's grandmother was in the house from the very first fight. How would he know that unless he was on social media? He didn't show up until halfway through the main card. What I mean? So you're right. That's like fan stuff. You're paying attention to what's out there. And so, yeah, but no, listen, to your original question, checking all the boxes, absolutely, man. Because, listen, watching his rise was phenomenal. I mean, just the very beginning where, the guy's on welfare and he's a plumber's apprentice and he rises to the top and he's having fun along the way and he's calling his shots. And, man, how could you not cheer for the guy? He's so infectious. It's like, man, this is amazing. But not only infectious, just a great story. And then he reaches the top and he gets the Mayweather fight and, all, the Habib stuff. And, again, we said it, the energy changes a little bit. It started with the RDA fight, the build up to that, the El Chapo thing and all that. I mean, it was clever, but that's when the whole gangster thing started, and then so that was just a time and a phase in his career, and I think he's admitted, he had some personal problems and some drinking problems, some all those things. So yeah, man, I do feel like this is a guy now that you want to cheer for again. I mean, it is special, man. The type of magnetism that he has is something you don't see in the sport. I mean, it's an X factor that most people just don't have, and you can't create. But now that, you can say, and he's a good guy too, so it would seem. Again, still out of the cage activities. We believe there's investigations. He said I can't talk about it, but I wholeheartedly deny it. We'll see. But this seems like a guy that you can cheer for again. I think people will want to see do well.
Yeah, and he's a guy who, in his run, you could ask him about any fighter in the featherweight division or the lightweight division. He'll tell you their height, their reach, their span, everything, their record. And there was a time where we just saw Conor, in his own little world, didn't care about anything. And it seems like that passion is back.
How about the breakdown of Ferguson, right? Listen, not that it was the most intricate, but he rattled it off the top. He is rangy, he's awkward, he's this, that. It's like, okay, listen, and then saying that he wants to fight, and I'll tell you too, man, I found it interesting that he does seem really open to all the possibilities. Now, of course, that's just smart. Have your opportunities so that you're not leveraged all into one thing. But it does seem like he's open to all these possibilities, and that's exciting because Conor McGregor can get any fight in the world, and it's, as Dana White said tonight, Conor McGregor and that guy with a camera right there would be an exciting fight, and that's the truth. That's the way it plays out.
Interesting, because Dana came out and really pushed the narrative of this Khabib rematch. I always love it because Dana doesn't even talk about Tony potentially winning and fighting Conor McGregor. In his mind, that's the huge one that.
Well, it's funny because it's kind of unfair because you're right, and I hate to interrupt you. Obviously he's not ruling out Tony Ferguson, but that's what people are going to read into it. But he is saying, like, all right, if it goes this way, because he's absolutely right, man. A rematch with Khabib would be phenomenally huge on a worldwide scale. I've been fortunate enough to travel the world and see fights in other markets. And obviously you guys are coming from halfway around the world. You understand it's not just about what resonates inside the United States. That is a fight with huge global implications. But I understand how people are going to read into it and say, hey, don't write off Tony just yet. And I would say, don't write off Tony just yet. He's dangerous.
Well, I was going to say, McGregor looks like he wants to stay active. If this Khabib-Tony Ferguson fight happens, then he has to wait for the winner. That takes some time. If it's Khabib, it could take a really long time. Obviously, he wants to get back in there. Do you see that as the way that this Masvidal fight potentially gets together? And if it's not Masvidal, because Dana's not very set on that fight coming together, is there somebody else that can sort of keep McGregor active before he fights for the title?
In a boxing match, maybe? You know what I mean? That might be a way to keep him busy, not ruin anything. We'll see if that happens. It is interesting. The timing of this makes it a little bit difficult, right? The good news, if it does turn out to be Khabib winning, is that, and I actually looked it on the calendar earlier, is that Ramadan, I think, is actually right after that fight. So, normally it's in the summertime. That won't be the case this particular year. So, I think, he'll take that break right after, which I think is good news. It is interesting timing-wise. As you said, Conor wants to stay busy. Dana seems hell-bent on doing Masvidal Usman right now, and I get that, man. It is a big fight. I tell you what, the fan sentiment out there from everything I've seen is that they would really like to do Masvidal, and I think it would make sense, So maybe if Usman needs some surgery done, or if he's got to figure, hopefully nobody hacked his bank account tonight, man. That was rough. But yeah, I'll be honest with you, just as a fan, I would like to see the Masvidal matchup right now. I don't think Masvidal's popularity has ever been any higher. Of course, Conor's a massive star. I think it would be a perfect timing for it. And as you said, then you can kind of let 155 sort itself out. Doesn't seem like that's the direction the UFC wants to go in. But who knows? When they get in that matchmaker meeting on Tuesday afternoon, maybe they'll change their mind. The only other thing I have to say is, Dana said he's talking to Floyd Mayweather, right? Maybe April's a little too quick for all that to come together, but wouldn't that be an interesting way to keep Conor busy and have him in a boxing match?
So
instead?
You think you believe that we see the rematch this year? It's a fight that drew most of McGregor's fortune, and Floyd Mayweather at the top of all the lists. It kind of seems like a no-brainer for both guys, but fans on social media just absolutely spitting at the idea of this thing happening, saying I would never watch it. It kind of sounds like the first time when it broke the records. Do you still think it's a big fight that could still break records and draw the same money that it did the first time?
Nobody wanted to watch it the first time around, yet somehow it sold 4 million pay-per-view buys from nobody watching it. No, listen, I'll be honest. I don't really want to see it. I don't want to see it. To me, it's not where Conor McGregor is at his best, and I'm not really saying it should happen. I'm just saying it is a way to keep him busy, and people would tune in. It would make a lot of money. I don't really want to see it myself personally, but it's just an option on the table.
It's a crazy situation, right? Because when you look at the Masvidal fight, from a business perspective, from Dana's perspective, you get it, right? The Khabib fight will be bigger than the Masvidal fight. Khabib is arguably, I think without a doubt, a bigger star than Masvidal, right? The rivalry, the bad blood would continue. It would be even bigger. So why ruin it with a Masvidal fight? And I also feel like Conor's kind of lukewarm on that idea, right? You talk to him about Masvidal, and he's like, I don't know about that belt. I'd add it to my collection, but it doesn't seem like he's pining for it. And then with Usman, he seems a little bit more interested because that's a bigger belt. The one time you hear him get really excited is Khabib in Russia. And I don't think it's going to happen in Russia. So I see what you're saying about this Floyd Mayweather fight. What I'm curious about, this Khabib rematch, do you think it could be bigger than the Floyd Mayweather fight in terms of pay-per-view and sales and all that kind of stuff, just because of, what previously happened and what people will come to expect?
I do, man. I know people think it's crazy, but listen, as I said, I've seen, globally how big Khabib is. And I don't think people realize that, man, just what a big star it is. But, I mean, go look at his social media numbers. It's insane, right? I don't think people necessarily realize how many markets this appeals to. To be honest, I really do think he could do that kind of numbers. Because I think what would end up happening is you'd sign some pay-per-view deals in countries that you don't normally have pay-per-views. And that's what I mean. It opens up. So I think that the TV deal changes a little bit and it becomes like a one-off. I mean, you see like BT Sport now in Europe, right? They have like occasional pay-per-views. And I think other providers would do the same thing. So, as you said, I agree, man. The history between, you're right. I mean, look, maybe it's $100 pay-per-view. Listen, I do think and again, don't count your chickens, right? April 18th, Tony Ferguson deserves all the respect in the world, man. That guy can ruin a lot of plans. But if for whatever reason Khabib does win, if for whatever reason Conor is willing to hang out and see what happens, I honestly do believe it could be that big of a fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where once the opportunity goes out the window, right, you just can't get the magic back in the bottle. So we understand where Danny is coming from. But we also spoke about Justin Gaethje, and I just want to get from your perspective, John, I mean, it's super stacked, that division. Even lower end in the top 10 rank, you've got Dan Hooker fighting Paul Felder. You've got all sorts of things happening in that division. Where does Justin Gaethje go? Dana says he wants to catch up with him, have a dinner with him. Can he potentially be a backup for that April fight? Is that Conor McGregor's position? Try and sort of figure something out for us here.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Justin Gaethje is deserving, right? I mean, he's like a number one contender as well, man. The division's so stacked right now. And Justin Gaethje is amazing. He's so fun to watch, and he's definitely a star. He doesn't have that star power yet in terms of like the common fan knowing who he is. I mean, hardcores like ourselves, of course, man, we would tune in if it was a Conor fight, whoever else. It'd be amazing. And Justin Gaethje is an incredible athlete. I don't know. I mean, he's always said, listen, I need full training camps. I don't like short notice fights. So will he be willing to take a backup role? I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're getting a little bit of money for it and you are able to have a full training camp in case you're called upon or activated, so to speak, maybe he would be willing to do that. Again, with the Conor thing, I mean, like, I believe Conor McGregor would fight April 18th. In that title fight. I mean, obviously he said it. He would jump in there. The problem is, when is the deadline? Because Conor's not coming in on a week notice. Conor's not coming in on 2 week notice. Now, if something happens to I don't even want to say it, man. I'm not even going to put that energy in the world. Yeah. But if something happens a month out or 6 weeks out and a change is needed, then I could see Conor saying, okay, I can do that. Listen.
And you lose the promotion, the ability to push it, the marketing. Dana just sat there and spoke about ESPN for a while, and what had they do for them for free? Lose all of that if it just happens last minute.
That's it. So listen, Gaethje's in a tough line. That's what's so weird is like there's so many good options on the table, but it all boils down to timing, right? I mean, look, you could start getting really creative. You could say, well, listen, man, we know we've got Woodley and Edwards coming up at welterweight soon. Why don't we pull Masvidal out of that and get like Woodley or Usman, or Woodley or Edwards win, slip in against Usman. I mean, there's so many things you can do. There's moving parts. It's all going to boil down to timing.
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to, Khabib Conor, huge fight. Usman Masvidal, huge fight. So you got 2 strong pay-per-views, and I think Dana White's mind is like, why muddle everything, all right? Just quickly before we wrap up, anything else to stand out to you? I know Holly Holm, won the rematch against Raquel Pennington. People were pretty lukewarm about that. Macy Barber, a young prospect, got stopped by Roxanne Modafferi. Overall, any other sort of standout moments to you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there were some great highlights tonight, right? Some performances, but you said it, Roxanne Modafferi. Now, listen, I'll just be honest. She teaches my kid jiu-jitsu. So, I mean, I spend a lot of time with her in the gym. And
Arjun Vegeta is teaching your kids jiu-jitsu.
Listen, it was amazing to watch Roxanne Modafferi. It was tough. Macy Barber was in a tough spot. I mean, look, the knee was certainly an issue. Weird to me, I don't know if there was like a pre-existing condition. I don't know that I've seen a doctor come in and check on things between rounds that way. So that was a little bit bizarre. But don't take away from Roxanne Modafferi because she was winning that fight beforehand. So it wasn't like the knee was everything there. So I thought that, just a huge upset. That was a moment that stood out for me because I don't think a lot of people thought she could win that fight. And again, when it's your kid's jiu-jitsu instructor, you're a little biased, I'll admit.
I'll tell you what, let's finish up with this. A lot of people sort of trying to predict how often Conor McGregor's going to fight in 2020, the beginning of a new decade, the McGregor decade. And even though he's given up the Vince McMahon strut, I know he'll be trying to strut into that octagon many times this year. He wants to have a season. If you had to sort of pick a number in your mind, how many times do you think we'll see Conor McGregor by the end of 2020?
I'll say 3 times. I say that Lorenzo, even though he's not involved with the company anymore.
He's doing all the lunches and the dinners, and he's basically the guy that everyone wants to meet up with before anything happens.
The McGregor whisperer, basically, the interpreter.
Hey, man, you get a couple billion in the bank from selling the UFC. People want to go have dinner with you real quick because you're probably picking up the tab. But no, listen, I think Dana and Lorenzo will probably get with Conor, and I think they will talk about the fact that, listen, there are big fights, and then there are the biggest fights of a generation. And while he's saying he wants to stay busy, and I believe him, I believe it would behoove Conor McGregor to wait through this April 18th fight and just see what happens. Don't rush into anything right now. There's options on the table. I mean, listen, the Nate Diaz trilogy, that's always going to be there. I've said it a million times. I'll say it again. Those guys could both lose 5 fights in a row apiece, and you could still put them back together for a trilogy fight, and it would do big numbers. I think they're going to probably talk some sense into Conor and say, listen, we appreciate your enthusiasm. We appreciate your willingness to stay busy. How about you stay training just in case something happens April 18th? But let's plan on June, July, International Fight Week, something like that, for a massive event with the winner for the lightweight title, and then I think he'd return again, in the fall sometime.
And plus a possible boxing match.
Yeah, and by the way,
which would earn him more money probably than a lot of the other fights put together.
Listen, Conor, stay patient. Don't fight MMA. Here's what we'll do in the meantime, just to keep you busy. We'll throw this thing together with Floyd. You'll make like $100 million, and it'll be a boxing match. It'll be cool, right? Yeah, exactly. They'll figure out something. They'll make him happy.
You always think about Holly Holm, right, and how badly he wanted her to wait for the Ronda Rousey rematch. Took the fight with Miesha Tate. We all know what happened there. It's interesting, though, right? Because Conor McGregor, from Dana's perspective, the whole thing comes down to what if you lose or the plans get ruined, right? Like, if he goes in there, beats Masvidal, it makes things even bigger, right? But it's a risk. But in Conor McGregor's mind, he's like, well, I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to predict how many times he fights this year, but what I will say is I saw that same kind of glint in the eye at the end. When I feel like all week there was a certain kind of nervousness to Conor. And I did hear, from sort of insides that there was a confident front coming from Conor in this camp, but maybe it wasn't really the truth. And I think in the post-fight presser, it was the first time we saw that old Conor, that self-belief, that truly almost, invincible, unshakable confidence.
There's a lot on the line. How could you not? I mean, even if you're
his career was on the line. Let's be honest.
At least at the highest level, I agree. I mean, that guy, anything he does is going to be big. But you're right. If he goes out there and loses, especially like, let's say he was the one that caught the high kick and gets knocked out in 40 seconds. You think he's going to be able to command? I mean, listen, he's still going to be a star. People are going to like him as a celebrity. But I mean, look, there was a lot on the line for Conor McGregor. Even as much as he believes in himself, even as confident as he is, there was a lot on the line for him.
Well, I'll tell you what, a different scene here at T-Mobile. Last time we were here, there were people fighting in the crowd. Conor McGregor fighting for his life now, replaced with a hug with Cowboy Cerrone's grandmother, a lovely way. And don't forget, Matthew McConaughey, all right, in the building as well. So with that, I think...
I think the grandma jumped the cage just to get that hug, right?
I'll tell you, by the way, I had to say, what a lovely moment that was. That was really, really
Very
cool. So with that, we're finishing up here. I think these are 3 guys that are looking for some liquid tonight. Finally, after abstaining, John abstaining for the last...
I did not agree to abstain at all.
For the last 3 minutes. So with that, we finish up Submission Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in, and enjoy your night.